Hey guys, would you like to hear yourself on a future episode of Disney Coast to Coast? Well, if you're in the Southern California area on Sunday, May 20th, 2018, now is your chance. On Sunday, May 20th, I'll be hanging out at Walt's Barn in Griffith Park, California, recording the voices of visitors and chatting with them about their Walt Disney Barn experience. Also joining me will be the Pizza Planet truck for some great photo opportunities, so get your Instagram accounts ready for that. So that's Disney Coast to Coast, Walt's Barn, and Pizza Planet truck all in one place. That sounds like a win-win-win scenario to me. Of course, if you've purchased a Disney Coast to Coast t-shirt or Newsies cap in the past, be sure to wear them to the barn. There may just be a surprise there waiting for you. I hope to see y'all there.
Are you craving a trip on Space Mountain? Well, we've got the next best thing. Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast.
Hey folks, and welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, the ultimate unofficial Disney fan podcast. I'm Jeff DePaoli, and in today's House of Mouse headlines, we get more info about the space-themed restaurant headed to Epcot, an epic Disney movie premiere in Hollywood, and we got some new information about the Star Wars series for the Disney streaming service. That and so much more, so let's get to it.
Hear the latest news from the Walt Disney Company in today's House of Mouse headlines.
First off, over at Epcot, we have the space-themed restaurant that we heard about a while back at the last D23 Expo. We heard that this space-themed restaurant was headed there, but there weren't a ton of details revealed, and honestly, I remember hearing rumors at one point that this restaurant may have been put on the back burner, and I wasn't sure the reasoning why behind that, but we just hadn't heard any info for a long time, and so I just kept hearing that rumor going around. I didn't particularly believe it myself because of the fact that, to me, this restaurant, as well as it being a really cool addition to Epcot, I just think it's a test for the Star Wars hotel that they're getting ready to build over by Disney's Hollywood Studios, because this is not going to be as simple as people think. Now, the idea for this restaurant is that you're in space, so there will be giant windows looking out into space, and of course, the Star Wars hotel will have that as well, and you know, the way that you move around space can definitely affect the way that you're feeling on the insides and, you know, whether or not you get nauseous or not. If you're a person who gets nauseous easily, I would really suggest staying away from this restaurant for the first few weeks at least. I feel like there's going to be a lot of testing going on with this. I know it sounds like a simple thing. You move slowly through space, but it's really weird how it can just screw with your equilibrium when you're sitting there watching something that looks like you're moving, but you're not really moving. It's a weird thing. So in any case, I never really thought it was going away, but they did announce that it's going to be placed between Mission Space and Test Track. Still no date for that yet, but pretty excited. I think this is going to be pretty cool, a nice little addition to Epcot, and I'm looking forward to it. I definitely want to check it out. Now over at the Crystal Palace restaurant, as well as the Plaza restaurant at the Magic Kingdom, they have decided to add alcohol as an option to those menus. These are not the only restaurants to make that available at the Magic Kingdom. Currently, we have Be Our Guest, the Skipper Canteen, Cinderella's Royal Table, Tony's Town Square, and Liberty Tree Tavern all have alcohol on the menu already. This is a much bigger deal, I feel like, or a bigger conversation anyway, at Disneyland, where it's a very famous story, you know, that Walt wanted the park to be dry because he felt that the seedy carnival-type atmosphere places had alcohol available, so he didn't want that at his Magic Kingdom, Disneyland. But as I mentioned, Magic Kingdom has quite a few options already, so this is just adding to it. Obviously, it makes them a lot of money. And in my opinion, even when it comes to Disneyland, which only has it available at Club 33, which of course is an exclusive club, in my opinion, if it's at a table service restaurant, I'm all for it. Like, I don't personally drink, but I don't see anything wrong with being a responsible drinker at a restaurant while you're eating a meal. If people enjoy that, enjoy it, right? I have no problem with it. I think it makes sense. The problem I do have is something like Disney California Adventure, where people are walking around with like those neon cups with beer inside. I think it just becomes a tacky atmosphere, and also in those situations I think people are much more likely to get drunk, which we don't want at Disney parks. So, you know, I think the happy medium of having them at table service restaurants is fine. So the addition of Crystal Palace and Plaza Restaurant, I'm totally cool with it, and frankly nobody really cares what I think, so in either case it's happening. Now, this next story is just happening right now. I just got an alert about this as I'm recording, so there may be some more details by the time this episode's released a couple days later, but If you are a fan of the Festival of Fantasy Parade over at Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom, you've probably heard already that the Dragon Float has caught on fire. Now, this is the coolest float, I guess arguably, but in my opinion, the coolest float in the parade. It is a fire-breathing dragon. It's very cool. And apparently something went wrong with the fire-breathing dragon and caught its own head on fire. So, as I mentioned, this story just broke, so there may be more information at this point, but I thought it was at least worth mentioning. Also happening over at Walt Disney World, they are creating a new way to deal with lost and found. Of course, these days, if there's an item that's lost and found, you usually just go to guest relations, city hall, wherever at the park, and, claim the item that you're looking for. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, but they're trying to create a system that would speed up this process, and that's by creating a website where you can report, track, and receive the lost items. This is going to be beginning on May 21st of this year, and it should speed up the process. My guess is, and I don't know this for certain, but I would assume if a cast member finds a lost item, they probably hold on to it till the end of their shift or something and then turn it in. But at this point, they'll be able to use the website and upload it immediately. That way, if somebody's looking for something, they go to City Hall, it's already known that this item's been found, and it just speeds up the process. And, it can really ruin a vacation if you've lost something really important, or even a phone. These days, my goodness, if you lose a phone, you kind of lose contact with everybody in your party. So it can be kind of terrifying. And at this point, it's just a separate website. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually it becomes part of the app. Over at Disney Springs at Walt Disney World, they did open a new store called Disney Style. I'm just going to read the official description that we get from Disney, and it says, "This shop contains a curated assortment of fashion-forward products inspired by beloved attractions at Disney parks and timeless Disney characters. This new destination is the place for creating stylish looks perfect for taking the next great selfie at Disney parks." I think that's a really funny description of the store. They're obviously encouraging, marketing on social media, good free advertising for them. And they even have photo ops in the store. They have one of the giant teacups that you ride in over at the Magic Kingdom, as well as some floating lanterns from Tangled and other photo opportunities. Perhaps they'll even put a purple wall in there eventually. I don't know. But I think it's funny that they essentially created a store to do social media photo shoots. That kind of cracks me up. Now for something happening at the Magic Kingdom as well as at Disneyland. A while back, maybe a few years ago, you may remember the whole Share a Coke Coca-Cola advertising campaign. And this was the campaign where they printed a lot of different names on Coke bottles, and you could basically buy a Coke bottle with your name on it or a friend's name or whatever. And that kind of became like this trendy thing to do. And they even had, I remember at Downtown Disney at one point, they kind of traveled along with these print your own name type of things, or print whatever you want on the Coke bottle, and it was just a silly little gimmick to sell more Coke, of course. But now Disney's getting in the game, and over on those two parks at Disneyland and Magic Kingdom, you can get bottles of Coke that now say Haunted Mansion, Tomorrowland, as well as Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. So they're kind of celebrating some of their attractions on Coke bottles. It's a little bit weird, but kind of cool at the same time. I do find it interesting, though, that the three names that they chose, two of them are rides and one of them is an entire land. I found that to be a little bit strange. I'm not sure the reasoning behind it. My guess is we will eventually get a lot more options and names, assuming that this does well, but you can look forward to seeing those in the Disney parks. Now, it was recently released that Bob Iger has met with some folks in Saudi Arabia to consider building a Disney park there. This is far from happening. In fact, Bob Iger said this is a very complex thing to do. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. We need to talk to a lot of people, figure a lot of things out. But basically, there's this thing called Vision 2030 for Saudi Arabia, and part of it includes the desire to include more recreation and tourism. So, obviously, if you want more recreation and tourism, building a Disney park isn't a terrible idea. The earliest that this would probably happen would be 2030, so I hope that doesn't mean Bob Iger's going to be extending until then. I mean, it's time. But I will say, once again, I think it's wonderful to build Disney parks around the world, but I once again remind you, there's a lot of land in Orlando. And let's just say the competition keeps building more and more theme parks. And pretty soon, they're going to be equal, if not more, than what we have at Walt Disney World. And I don't think we should let that happen. So I suggest, forget Saudi Arabia, let's stay in Orlando. Now, out here in Hollywood, they did have a big premiere for Solo, a Star Wars story, which of course is the prequel story or the origin story of Han Solo from the Star Wars universe. A movie that has had a bit of controversy surrounding it. They did switch to a new director. Ron Howard ended up becoming the director of the film, but that didn't stop them from having a massive, massive premiere here in Hollywood. In fact, they built the Millennium Falcon on Hollywood Boulevard. It looked pretty darn cool. I did not personally go down and look at it myself because I'm sure it was chaos, but it did look like a pretty cool premiere. It's a nice little... This is becoming a regular thing now. It seems like we're having Star Wars vehicles all over Hollywood Boulevard whenever there's a big premiere for a Star Wars movie. So the Millennium Falcon certainly makes sense for Solo, a Star Wars story, which of course comes out May 25th, 2018. So we still have a little ways to go before we can see it, but a bunch of people did the other night. Speaking of Star Wars, we did previously hear that Jon Favreau will be creating and directing a Star Wars live-action series for the Disney streaming service when that comes out, and he did leak a little bit more information about that at the Solo premiere. It's going to take place 7 years after the Battle of Endor, so we now have a time period for the film. It's also going to be a new cast of characters, and something that I find very interesting is he said it'll have CGI effects like we've seen in the Jungle Book movie that he directed, which of course was spectacular CGI work. He's also working on the live-action Lion King right now, but I was a little surprised to hear this simply because... maybe it's not a fair comparison, but I always think if something's going to a streaming service, it's treated more like a TV series as far as budget and time is concerned. But if they're going to be putting those type of CG effects into these films or this show, that's going to be quite an expensive little feat. So maybe they're dumping a lot more money into this Star Wars TV series than we previously realized. So that's kind of exciting. Now for all of you musical theater and Frozen fans out there, you can now own and listen to over and over and over again the original Broadway cast recording of Frozen the Musical. Yes, it is now available. You can hear all of those new songs. I'm excited to hear the full orchestrations of these songs and, of course, new voices behind these characters that people have fallen in love with in the film. It's always a little jarring when you hear a different voice singing these songs that you've heard a billion times. So if you're a fan of Frozen and or musical theater, go check that out. I'm sure there'll be some great stuff in there. And before we get going, of course, we got to get to this week's Twitter poll. Now, on this past Wednesday's episode of Disney Coast to Coast, I had my friend Aaron on, and we had a discussion about the use of celebrities in Disney attractions. So for this week's Twitter poll, I asked you, which of the following celebrities would you like to see used as part of a Disney attraction? Your options were Neil Patrick Harris, John Stamos, Oprah Winfrey, or Chris Hardwick. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I gotta say, the last on the list here is Oprah Winfrey with 12% of the votes. Guys, last on the list, Oprah Winfrey? Really? I mean, it's Oprah Winfrey. She should be at the bottom of no list unless it's most hated person in America. So I'm very disappointed in you all. But following her at 14% was Chris Hardwick, followed by Neil Patrick Harris at 30%, and the winner with a whopping 44% of the votes was John Stamos. I think he'd be great. I love how much he loves the parks, and I think it would be great to see him in an attraction if it made sense and worked. But yeah, really 12% Oprah Winfrey, guys? Come on. Guys, if you want to be part of the Twitter poll, just follow DIZNEYCTC on Twitter, and then you can be part of the Twitter poll every single week. I also want to remind all of you that on Sunday, May 20th, I will be at Walt's Barn in Griffith Park along with the Pizza Planet truck. You should come check us out from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. We'll be there recording, so perhaps you could be heard on a future episode of Disney Coast to Coast. Come hang out, get some photos, perhaps some giveaways. It should be a fun time. I also want to remind all of you that every single day on Instagram, I play a game called the Daily Disney Decision, where I give you guys an option between two things for a Disney decision, and you guys vote, and it's just a fun little live game we do every single day. Make sure you're following DIZNEYCTC to play along on Instagram, or head to DisneyCoastToCoast.com, click on the DDD tab for more instructions about that. All of our social media can be found over at DisneyCoastToCoast.com, and of course, keep leaving those iTunes reviews and ratings, 5 stars. It helps other folks find the show more easily, so thanks for that. And of course, guys, this episode of Disney Coast to Coast was produced by Philip Elke, who has supported the show through Patreon. If you'd like to become a DCTC producer or gain other rewards, more information can be found at patreon.com/DCTC. But for now, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for watching Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePaoli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.